Welcome, everybody, to the Speak with Power workshops. My name is Novsky, and I'm an executive communication coach. And I'm here to spend some time with you today to talk to you about a way you can really change not just what you say, but how you say it. So, as we go through this together, I am hoping to hopefully get some of you to participate as well in order to get your input, your ideas into the conversation. This is admittedly my first time using the live feature, so I'm very much interested to hear what you all gonna think and say as we continue this discussion. Consider this my start moment. How you doing, Paul?
Doing well. How you doing, Leo?
I am marvelous. Welcome, welcome. So I am here right now to kind of start off the conversation and see what people get out of it at the end of it. This is just obviously 1 hour. It's not enough to change the way you speak or connect with everyone. And it is my hope that this will be one of those things that start you thinking. I always say that the purpose of a presentation is not to feed people information, but to make them hungry. And I hope that that is precisely what we are going to be able to do today. So, as we continue, where do we start? One of the things that I want to start with is what's at stake here. And why are we talking about a structure that kind of supersedes the content that you are focusing on? And for me, the number one thing is that content might change with the situation, but the structure can carry the content, right? Think of it in my mind. One of the best ways to think about it is think of your structure of your presentation as a car or as a vehicle. What's in the trunk is what you get to transport from point A to point B. But obviously, if your car is a go-kart, there's not much you can carry, and maybe not a lot of distance. But if it's a truck, by far, it's a much better vehicle. In the same way, if I take this analogy a little further, what I get to think about, depending on where you're going, determines the type of a vehicle you take. If you are going up the mountain, a Ferrari is not your best vehicle. If you're trying to go on a racetrack where there are no obstacles and the purpose is to get as fast as possible from point A to point B, that determines that Ferrari might be just the right car for you. In the same way, when you're presenting to others, whether it's in a presentation or in an interview, depending how many boulders are in your way, how many things you have to actually overcome, will determine the type of vehicle that you actually need to get the information across. And yet, what I see time and time again, and I would love to get some input from people here, is I see that we often come in, one, with a preconceived notion of who our audience is and what they need to hear. But even more often than not, we don't even consider the audience at all. We're so enamored or worried about the information we're about to share that we forget to actually think about the vehicle that carries that information to the destination. Does that resonate with anyone here? Yeah, Scott, how you doing, man?
Doing okay, buddy.
Perfect. Feel free to unmute yourself if you would like to give a piece of feedback. I muted a couple of you just so because there was a little bit of a feedback in the beginning, but please feel free to unmute and put yourself on video. My hope is that this is going to be a discussion. I'm going to share the information in a very, very simple way. I'm not going to bore you with big slides and trying to get you to take lots of notes. However, what I want to do is I want to just give you this nugget, something that you can kind of take with you and use as a scorecard against whatever it is that you're about to say. And I hope to do that in less than 20 minutes, even less than that. And depending on how many people are here and what is the energy in the room, what I hope to do is to get people to talk, get people to practice this START model, and perhaps even if somebody is up for being on a hot seat, to kind of go through a live event of like, how would you say it? Okay, now how would you say it with a START model in mind? Make sense? All right. So, by the way, one other question is, this is my first time going live with it on LinkedIn and YouTube. So I am very interested in knowing that this is actually working. We will see, but that is one of my hopes, that that's what we're about to do. All right. Well, here's the thing. If you are thinking about presenting, it would be probably in three major areas, right? One is if you need to share something with the audience that who already knows you and who already believes what you believe. So you're preaching to the choir. Number two is that you actually are presenting to people who do know you, who have who understand you, who value you, but who may not agree with you, or the information that you are presenting might be challenging. And third is probably the where people don't know who you are. They don't have your trust. They don't understand you personally, and what you are talking about is not that much of interest to them. But who you are is of interest to them. So if you think about these three areas, just reflect on it for just a second, and you will immediately see that the way you communicate and what you highlight will be drastically different, or should be drastically different, even if the content is the same. Right? So in an interview, which is where most people speak most of the time in this setting, where the stakes are really high and people don't know who you are, right? That is where the data, the information that you are sharing, is of least importance, right? If you are in a meeting with the CEO and your project is on the line, the budget is on the line, you've worked for them, they trust you, right? The content is of utmost importance. Your trustworthiness is already secured. Make sense? So before we begin with the structure, I want you to figure out, bring in your mind an idea or a time where when you spoke mattered in one of these three ways. Okay? Give me a thumbs up if you can think of one. So then you have one in your mind. Okay? So now, what I'm introducing to you right now is a very simple structure, and it's called START, right? And let's see if I can get this to work. Perfect. 1 second. It's not working for me. 1 sec. 1 moment. There we go. Okay, that should work. Okay.
There you go.
So here is the what I would want you to kind of take away from this, right? So think of an acronym called START, right? Setup, tension, action, resolution, takeaway. Okay? Setup, tension, action, resolution, and takeaway. Okay? So what does that mean? It means that if you take whatever the presentation you're about to give, you're going to ask 5 simple questions. What is the setup? How do I engage the audience? Whether I am bringing in the tension, pouring the salt on the wound, creating a problem where the problem needs to exist. Prompt a specific action for an A, action, and then highlight the resolution, something above the benefits. And finally, takeaway. Also, T can stand for transition, because if you are having a multi-part discussion, you might have to go through the START model again and again and again. So how do you transition to the next person, or how do you transition to the next problem? Make sense? Setup, tension, action, resolution, takeaway. Setup, tension, action, resolution, takeaway. Now, very quickly, here's what usually happens. People are enamored or with their information. Agreed? We know what we want. And if you are thorough, if you're on this presentation, on this, hearing this, you're concerned, if you're a business owner or if you are a really good professional, you want to be thorough, honest, and complete, right? Thorough, honest, and complete. And those are the 3 death nails of a presentation. Not because they're not important, but because if you stick to those, you will never finish on time, you will never get to the heart of the audience, and you will ultimately never get the results you want. So instead, so what happens is people come in, and what do? They start with action, right? They get some kind of a silly joke, if any. They basically, their setup is some kind of a, hey, this is the agenda for today. And then they go into, here's what we need to do. And so they go and charge into the action. You haven't earned the right for action. You have not earned the right. Do not go into action, right? And in fact, I would say 80% of the presentation, if not more, of most people you've sat through those interviews or through those presentations are all about action. In fact, most of them run out of time. They never actually get to takeaway. They're lucky if they get to resolution, right? That's all they do. They go action, resolution, action, resolution. That's not where the heart is. That's where the mind is, right? But as one of my mentors said, the mind is connected to objections. The heart is connected to resolution. So which one do you want? Objections or resolution? So instead, let's back up. So what does it mean, setup? Setup is a hook that will get people to really, really listen. One of my favorite things to do is to subject whatever it is you're going to start with the next first 30 seconds to a minute, depending on how long the whole thing is to fire alarm test. You ready? Here's the fire alarm. You are invited to speak on an interview or a presentation. So far with me? 1 minute into your presentation, a fire alarm goes off. You have to evacuate the building. There is an actual fire. You never get to finish your presentation. Fast forward 6 hours later, the people in the audience, those that you actually want, who is your actual audience, the intended audience, okay, are sitting at a dinner table. Their partner asks them, so what happened today? They say, you know what? We are about to have an amazing presentation or a really interesting interview, and 1 minute in, the fire alarm went off. Never got to finish. Next question is, who was that? What did they talk about? And if they cannot summarize and care about what you were going to say, then your setup is not good enough. It's not good enough. So how do you do it? You start with some kind of a hook, right? It could be a statement. It could be a provocative question. right? If it could allow you, what I did is I asked you to go back into your heads and think about your own problem, which is one you care about. I guarantee, not my content, your problem. And then you get people, tell them what you're going to tell them. Now, this could vary depending on one of those three things that you are attempting to do. If you're attempting to convince people of your worth, then focus on that. If your hope is to get a resolution to a problem, say that. If your goal is to educate or just share information with those who already know and like you and know and like the subject, fantastic. Let them know that. In Toastmasters, there was a famous phrase, tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. So 3 times. So in that setup, you want to capture people's imagination or fear or hunger or curiosity, and then tell them what's at stake and what is going to happen. So then the purpose is then to get people hungry for what's to come. Make sense? Okay, I'll leave it at that. Any questions about setup?
What would be an example of your setup as you went to the dinner table? You were talking about hey, what happened at this thing? And you said something.
Mm-hmm.
You
So
said that it wasn't the right setup. What would you say?
okay, I will turn it around just on you, Scott. Okay, the fire alarm happened here. The internet cut off. My setup was done in about 2 or 3 minutes ago. What would you have said to your partner or someone who asked you, what was this whole thing about? How would you say it? What did you retain?
No, I could talk about that. I retained your opening slide, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was good to see Leo again. And unfortunately, we got cut off. And I look forward to talking to him again.
But what did you, was that going to be important, right? You're going to learn something interesting. You were going to say, you're going to learn about the structure.
Yeah, he outlined his structure, the start method, and then he was going through. He was going to start to go through each one, and
Right.
No, we didn't get that. So
Right, exactly. So there is a
the
need
hook.
for that, but you clearly, your audience would know who I was and what I was about and what I was about to say. So that's it. The idea is if it's an interview, hey, I had this amazing guy who had so much structure, so much promise, right? He could be our next CTO, but we got cut off. But man, one of the things, he was a military officer and was working in Bosnia for several years, really transforming that whole conflict, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
something that sticks.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I listened to Leo and we didn't get to the actual thing, but man, I reflected of how many boring presentations I sat through. And I'm like, oh my God, what would happen if I actually applied whatever he has? It doesn't really matter. A rain dance, as long as it helps, right? So that's it.
Got it.
Okay. So anybody else? Paul, Galen, anyone else? Any questions?
Making sense so far.
All right, cool. So the next thing is the most important thing. So in the framework of your presentation, there are 2 major parts that are most important: the tension and the takeaway. So the 2 T's are the most important parts of your presentation. I'll explain why. But the tension is most important because you have to earn the right to give them solutions or to tell them about you. Earn the right. Now again, remember, what's the presentation for? Is it to convince people of new information? Is it to share information? Or is it convince them that you are a trustworthy individual or someone that you need to be, that you could be trusted? But once you do, that's what you ultimately need them to react to. So your tension is, what's their pain? Not your pain, not the pain of your ideas. What's their pain? For example, I know that some of your is, when you present, you might not get the job you want. When you present, you might never get to the end of your presentation and ask for things you want. You run out of time. When you present, you might lose hours of sleep trying to memorize or cram as many pieces of data as possible. or as many pieces of information on one slide. If any of what I said created an in you, then I win. Then the tension wins. And the bigger the tension, the better it is. So one of the major tricks I'm going to tell you, okay, is that when you're thinking about tension, okay, ride the elephant. Okay, you can write it down, ride the elephant. What does that mean? You know that elephant in the room? You know, the big problem? Not the thing that you're talking about, the big thing. You know, you might be talking about presentation and sales, but the truth is there is a big problem that looms on the horizon, like tariffs. I don't know, right? Tie the small problem to the elephant and then kick the elephant. Let the elephant do the job. You're just the speaker, right? If you are interviewing and they haven't had the right person in the job, don't talk about yourself, talk about the problem first. The problem is this is a critical, mission critical job that clearly, you know, if that's the truth, hasn't been fulfilled. Let their problem lead the way. Open the field, right? Can you imagine a huge elephant riding, you know, charging down the field with a tiny little, you know, horse tied to it, which is your big small problem? The horse will have no problem getting through, not at all. So think about how you can build the problem up. And the problem can be about the issue or ideally about something bigger than that. Now, again, you're not talking about that in action. In action, you're hyper-focusing on your problem, but you want to open it up with tension. And you want to get, the last thing about tension that I'm going to say is you want to get a buy-in from the audience if you can. If you can. Is that the problem? Because it would be very embarrassing if you did a marvelous problem, but it wasn't theirs. Or the elephant, you released the elephant, but in the wrong direction. So, did I understand your problem as a communicator when you are starting to talk and interview or present? Or is there something else? Anybody here have a thought?
Yeah, I was thinking about it, without giving a lot of context, but you know, I was giving a talk at a workshop that I did, and talking about a problem that is a problem. It's the elephant, about gathering data, and everybody was understanding it, going along. Okay, yeah, I'll get the data. I was trying to kick the elephant in that this is a big problem we need to solve because it's something that's happening in our society, and when we solve it, it'll be great, but we really have to do it. And there was a lot of buy-in, but then there was like, okay, and then not really buying into and then with the takeaway action and takeaway, really buying into oh yeah, I should do that.
Right. We'll talk more about the action, but
Okay,
the idea is, but that's really important to get a buy-in. So as long as you don't need to get a full story, but is that resonating? If that's resonating,
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
right, that's the problem. Yeah, then it's
Okay.
great.
Okay.
Now, after you get to set up intention, the next thing is the action. This is where less is more, and this is gonna hurt you. I know it. If it doesn't hurt, then it's not right. In his one of Mark Twain's famous quotes was, "Forgive me for writing you a long letter. I didn't have time to write you a short one." Okay, so this is a perennial issue of mine. So do as I say, not as I do. But the idea of action, get to the point really, really fast to let the people solve it. And so this is the key. The faster you get through this process while keeping the buy-in, the more time it is for them to get involved in the solution. And that's, people buy into this action most of all when it's their solution or when they had something to do with it, and you know it. So that's where the action is. And outline 2 or 3 steps and then say that let's come back to it together. So here's the START acronym. This is how you would work through it. Let's come back to it at the end and get real solutions done. Fair enough? Okay, and again, getting buy-in at different stages of the presentation is important. Next, raise the stakes with the resolution. Resolution is the key. Resolution is where you get them to say, yes, that's right. And in the book, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, one of my favorite books on communication and negotiation, he separates the difference between you're right and that's right. And I certainly know the difference, because when people say, you know what, you're right. Yeah, you're right. I should work out. Yeah, you're right. We should do this. Yeah, you're right. And I'm like, oh, okay, good. We got buy-in. We didn't get no buy-in. There's no buy-in. They're just trying to get away from you. And if you are different cultures, like in Japan, for example, yes doesn't mean yes. It just means no, unless you really, really got it right. So the idea here is, yes, that's right, which means they took the idea, whatever you have, and they took it upon themselves as their own. That is a very different experience. And so your job in the presentation is to make sure to what degree that people bought in the resolution. But again, the purpose is not to convince everyone. The purpose is to get them thinking and so the resolution has to be incredibly important, but again, not the most important. So action and resolution should be the shortest and the most concise pieces, especially because in real life, they usually take up 80% of the presentation. I want you to have it take up 30, right? Lastly, leave the valuable takeaway. So takeaway, for me, is very specific, because the purpose of your presentation, right? It could be entertainment, but that's not what we're talking about. So the purpose is to help people know what to think, what to feel, and what to do. Think, feel, and do. Those are our actions. They're all around feeling and decisions. But what do you want them to think, feel, and do? And to make it just a little bit more complicated, I want you to think in 3 different stages. What do you want people to think, feel, and do immediately, right after this conversation? What do you want them to do intermediately, maybe in a day, whatever your intermediary timeline is? And what do you want them to do long term? Right? So 3 things. What do you want them to think, feel, and do right after this presentation? And you need to share it with them. What do you want them to think, feel, and do going forward in the next day or 2, or whatever the timeline is? And what do you want them to do in the next week, 2, or 3, right? So then they have a clear idea of where they're going. So the tension and the takeaway are really the 2 most important ones, the ones that you want to spend more time on. And they're typically the ones that you spend the least time in, for different reasons, right? You don't spend enough time on tension because it's too painful and you want to get to action. And you don't get to takeaway because you run out of time. And that's it. Setup, tension, action, resolution, takeaway. The takeaway for me here is that this simple structure has helped me countless times take a presentation, my own and that of others, my clients, and turn it around, sometimes within minutes, because all I have to do is assess where is the problem. Is the problem in tension? Then put in the tension. If there's too much action, cut it down to 1 or 2 action items, right? Is there a specific steps you want them to think, feel, and do? What would they be? Give it to me. And that's it. And then pull back and ask people to engage, which is something that you don't get if you spend time just being thorough, complete, and honest.
Right.
So that's it. That's the idea. I would love to get people's feedback or thoughts on this, and maybe even open it up to a little workshop-y opportunity here, as we are crossing the half an hour mark.
That was terrific, Leo. Um, I'm looking at that. I'm trying to think of where a lot of the problems with any of my presentations. Now, fortunately for me, I finally got smart and, and started preaching to the choir. It's just a lot easier, right? But okay, so getting that started. But I start with a hook and I do the tension part because it's all agreed upon that it's all tension with everybody. So it's not a hard thing to build. Like people have basic human needs. How much do they have? And what do we need to do about it? And those are things that everybody kind of buys into. Because yeah, we have to do that. And on the so on the information side, I don't have to go way into that. Everybody knows the statistics. Everybody knows the
Mm-hmm.
that it's thorough and it's honest. So I can get that stuff quickly. But when it comes to action, um, that I'll say, how are we going to solve that problem? I think like this. What do you think? So I look for back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll go to, um, you know, how do, we know what the resolutions are, but the takeaways are usually going to be something like, um, I want you to do this, this, and this. I'll also ask them what do they think they should do this as takeaways. What did they get as takeaways? But on the action part, if one of the takeaways is I need to go back and do this in our groups,
Yep. So
and
what is the question then?
the
Or
question
what
is
is
it doesn't follow through to the actual action that they take away.
okay, so let me understand this correctly. By the way, rephrasing questions,
Mm-hmm.
organizing questions, and
Yeah.
rephrasing them are a great tip,
Mm-hmm.
especially in interviews.
Yeah.
When people ask you feed questions, you can stop and not answer the question, but just rephrase the question to make sure that it is what you heard and also potentially what you want to answer. So
Yeah.
in this case, what I heard you say is that you can do all of these steps, but then the action, the actual actions in the takeaway, people don't follow through. They don't go into the breakout rooms. They don't get to the things that you are talking about. Is that correct?
Yeah. Or they'll go out. I mean, even leave the presentation
Yep.
completely, and then go have their own groups, and like, what was it we were supposed to do?
Yep. So it's not clear. So this
Yeah.
is really, really powerful. So first of
Okay.
all, just a quick note on tension. You mentioned something about tension and everybody understands it, everybody knows it. If that's the case, then your tension is
It's
flat.
not. It's not
It's not
attention.
tension,
Yeah.
right? It's not tension. So you got to figure out and get into individual people's tensions sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you can't get the money. You can't get the money that you need in order to push your nonprofit along,
Mm-hmm.
right? It might be your problem. Might not be Paul's, but Paul understands the pain of no money. So there is an emotional connection. We have these neurons called mirror neurons in our brain. So when you hurt, I hurt. I feel it as if it's my pain. So your tension has to be painful. It can't be generalized. It can't be the world is suffering, we're hungry, da 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 da. It has to be like Jerry has no money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or USAID lost all its. I was just talking to one of my partners. USAID closed all his books. I have David, who's been working with farmers of Central Chad and lost 60% of the money that ultimately helps those men and women literally grow their crops and help them educate these kids so they don't become child soldiers in the militia.
Mm-hmm.
Child soldiers in the militia. If you didn't hurt hearing that,
Yeah.
then you're
Right.
not my audience, right?
Right.
But since you did, your attention is right there. So, but it's that piece of information that ultimately
Mm-hmm.
gets it. So, what is it intention that gets people's attention? Ooh, I'm going to use that.
So it's an
What is it
emotional tension.
intention that gets people's attention? And then on the takeaway, what I'm asking all of you to do in your piece of paper, because we're going to about to get into kind of a workshop part of it, if you are willing, is to write 3 things that you want your audience ideally to think, feel, and do immediately, intermediately, and long term. And then communicate it in the most clean possible way. So, for example, at the end of this presentation, I would love for you to write down start and then send me some kind of a note, just a quick note to tell me what you thought of it. Okay? Intermediarily, I want you to actually try it out. Try it out on any presentation that you want. Write it out on a piece of paper and then use it as a scorecard to see how it does. And if it works, if you're willing, let me know if it does. And long term, I would love for you to join some of my other workshops, or if you can use me as a coach, I can help you figure out your career path or the idea of how do you actually manage communication in your chosen career. That could be a valuable, if I can be a valuable tool, great. So 3 things, you know what I want you to do. You can do what you want. But it shouldn't be the question of, hey, what did you want us to do? Right? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, follow up. How do you follow it up? Right? Mm-hmm. All right. Other questions. I know other people have been silent. Please put yourself on video if you can. If not, audio is fine. But I would love to hear your input. What did you think of this presentation so far?
I found it super helpful, especially the tension portion of it. It's interesting how you phrase it as like it's painful because like you want to, it's already like if it's an interview, you're already a little nervous anyway. Mm-hmm. And to purposely try to bring in additional tension to try to get to a point could be like, that's the last thing I want to do. I want to make this tension free as possible. You know, like, don't run from that. Like,
don't. Yeah. And with interview, you're bringing up a really good point, Paul, is that, but the tension, again, the elephant in the room is not you. Is not your, in an interview session, the elephant in the room is most likely they have not gotten the person they need yet. They are interviewing many people and nobody fits the bill, right? Or if they already have someone and you are just there as a placeholder, it would be very important to know so that you don't spend your emotional energy investing in something that is not there to begin with, right? I'm going to do another workshop specifically on job seeking and how mostly everything that you've learned about job search is a lie. It's an absolute lie. There are no jobs. There are only connections and people with connections that get you where you need to go. But that being said, people in the audience have their own problems, their own things. So going out of your way to identify what they are and then harp on that, not on your presentation, not on your skill set, not on your abilities, harp on what their issues are, what your issues are, right? And as a side note, here's another really nice trick. Watch out for 4 most important words in an interview. Paul, would you like to know the most important words in an interview?
I very much would.
Funny you say that. Watch it. It's so cool. Or something like that. Now that you mention it, funny you say that. It's not funny. You didn't say anything. But whatever they're going to say is going to be their issue, their thing. And so everything should pivot around to that, right? And the more you bring in, the more you work with their tension, not your tension. Not that, hey guys, I just want to mention that I'm nervous. No, they don't care about your tension, but their tension they care. So yeah, that's a really powerful one. And you can research it too. You can also ask them. You know that thing that people say, do you have any more questions for us? Do you have any questions for us at the end? You know, what a joke. First of all, you're already like, here, you don't have any questions. You just want to get out of there. And second of all, that is so valuable, then why not just ask questions up front? Mm-hmm. So you can ask questions. He's like, hey, thank you for inviting me. I just had a few questions. I researched your company, or I have a best friend, Mark, who introduced me to this. right? He told me a few things. I've spoken to one or two of you, and it sounds to me like this is the problem you're dealing with. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And stand back and watch. They will do their own job. They will do all your job for you because they care. So that's, yeah. So I'm glad that you really caught on to it because that tension is the key. So I hope others got a chance to enjoy what that was. Hopefully, you see, they left early, so but they know what the takeaway is. Contact me, reach out. Awesome. Does either of you want to give me any other feedback and or want to actually go through a specific communication challenge where we can actually put the START method to the test?
Well, one thing that became clear was that I was confused, or not confusing, but thinking of tension as defining the problem. And that's what I was doing. So I define, and I don't spend a lot of time on defining the problem because everybody understood the problem, even locally, even in their own neighborhood, right? They already get that. They already know those things. But I'm not creating the emotional tension about it. That's what I got from that. Thank
I
you.
think that's so important. And I think, thank you so much, Scott. This idea that it's all about, it's tension, not the problem,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Now, problem can be part of tension,
Yeah.
right? But attention in your audience, right? For example, let's say you are speaking to it's a fundraiser
Mm-hmm.
and you're speaking at an event with 100 people. Out of those 100 people, there are 5 people who can actually give you money.
Mm-hmm.
Your audience is those 5 people, no one else. You're speaking just to those people. Now, what is their problem? Now, out of those 5 people, there are 2 people in their 80s. They can't take it with them, okay? And they're looking for the right people to trust so they know that what they do will leave a legacy,
Right.
okay? So if you tell those 2 people that their problem is leaving a legacy worth leaving and making the money that they work so hard for to work for them after they're gone,
Mm-hmm.
that's the tension.
Got it. Yeah.
Not
Mm-hmm.
the tension is not the world is hungry or the people are needy or any other thing like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can get there other ways, right? You can tell a story, never
Right.
summary, but a story of an other individual, and they feel it.
Mm-hmm.
That's also very powerful. But one day or the other, the tension has to be with what they are working on. And
Right.
very often tension has very little to do with the takeaway,
Right.
right? So that's a really important part. And this idea of like, well, what do I do? Everyone knows what the problem is, right? Yes. So then avoid it.
Right.
It's not the
Right.
point.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's really great. Anybody here, do you guys have anything for the next 5 minutes? I would love to maybe help with a particular challenge or any presentation or anything that's coming up for you.
I just go back to the tension. Maybe this is what you're looking for, but just a question on that. So, like tomorrow, I have an interview that I'm excited to go for. So, would it be a fair point I'm comfortable with the job description and expressing that, but to turn it around as we start it's just a little 20-30 minute like get to know you interview, be able to say, okay, I'm comfortable with the job description, but what is the pain that what is the issues you're trying to solve with this? Is this it's a new position? Are you replacing somebody? What led you to get here that you're looking to fill this? Is that and let them come to me with it.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful way. First of all, it's a great setup. I've researched your company. I understand what you guys are doing, and I'm really interested in the job. But I am curious, just to start off, what causes you to look for this job? Is it loss of someone who already did a great job, or is this a new thing, or where are you at with this, right? And be quiet and let them talk. And then the key here is to, I'm going to say always with parentheses, always, always summarize of what you heard. Now, again, don't overdo it, but the idea is, what I heard you say is this, is that right?
Right.
And get them to say, yes, that's right, right? The more times you get to say, somebody says, yes, that's right. Not yes, you're right. Yes, that's right. And if you get a one or two funny you say that, you're solid. You've done really well. And the content is not relevant. It's just not. Not only because it's not relevant, which it is, but also it's impossible to do it in 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It's impossible to know.
Yeah.
However, in an interview specifically, there is another element here, okay? And a lot of it depends on who is in the audience. Now, in this particular situation, my question to you is, do you have a champion in the room?
This particular, not directly, no.
Okay. Do you have a champion in the game?
Yeah, so in this particular company, very familiar with it. My current company uses them as a vendor,
Okay.
and I approached our their VP of sales, and say, hey, I'm interested in this. Would you mind recommending me? And he wrote a very nice little thing. The hiring manager was now got me the interview.
Beautiful. You're following the rules, right? What's the first name? You could change the name too. What's the first name of the hiring manager? And what's the first name of the VP that you work for? John is the hiring manager?
John is the VP. Bill is the hiring
Bill,
manager.
got it. So, by the way, just a side note, names are magic. Without names, it's just summaries. As soon as you start saying Bill and John, people will see Bill and John. Okay? A VP recommended me, or John recommended me. Very, very different, both in your brain and the brain of the audience. Okay? Side note. Now, so John is the VP, Bill is the hiring manager, right? Yep. So your John is your champion. He's not even in the room. So your job is to circle back to John and make sure that he circles back to Bill and talk about you behind closed doors. Okay? That's your job. What you say in the interview is not as important as that action.
Right.
Okay? Because Bill might have other people who recommended other people, and the people who come back to him, if out of all the others, John is the only one who comes back and talk about Paul, and no one else talk about their candidates, then you win, even though you might not be the best candidate necessarily or have the best whatever. Does that make sense?
Yep, 100%.
So, right, and now in the interview, your purpose should be to understand not the company's problem and not the company's tension, but Bill's problem and Bill's tension, right? And let me give you a really illustrative example, right? The company is a company, right? You said you know it. Mm-hmm. Now, is Bill one of three things? Either he just started a few years ago or got promoted just recently and are trying to prove himself. He is well into his career. Nothing can touch him. He's comfortable as heck. And three, he is 2 years from retirement. He's just biding his time. Which one is he, you think?
Probably the first one.
Okay. Do you understand that the difference in the interview, all else being equal, is completely different? Right? If he is early in his career trying to prove himself, then you coming in and saying, I'm going to break some things and I'm going to make you look so good. And myself, but I'm going to make you look good right along with me, is going to go over really well. But if it was the third, the last thing Bill would need is Paul, who goes and breaks things. Okay? Right? So the idea is understanding your audience is the most important thing, and you should spend as much time as you can before, during, and after the interview understanding Bill. And Bill will tell you, if you can get him on the same side of the table, he will tell you exactly how to get this job, or he'll tell you that actually the job isn't there anyways, It's already been taken. We're just going through the motions. But now I am your champion, and I'm going to go above and beyond and do this thing all over again. Do you see my
Yeah.
point?
Yep.
So it's going outside of the START acronym into understanding your audience. But understanding your audience's tension is really the key. Cool. All right, guys. It's 50 minutes in. Scott, do you have any quick things that you wanted me to maybe run by me, or where are you at?
It's all great, Leo. I was just like listening to you say anything, but uh, yeah, the one part about clarifying problem over tension is great. I really appreciate that, and then because that will also bring that tension back to their group and say this is why we're doing this, right? And so it carries over into the takeaway, and that's what you do it,
I
right?
couldn't have said it better myself, Scott. It carries over into the takeaway. Tension into the takeaway. So you remind people of what you were going to say. So, Paul, in your interview, when you talk about once they give you the tension, if you don't already know it, you can repeat it during takeaway and say, if you hire me, and again, three levels, right? When can I hear from you? Right? Please let me know immediately what any kind of feedback. That's your immediate, right? Even if I don't get the job, I would love to know how I did. That's another one potentially. And in the future, right, one way or the other, Bill, I would love to connect with you. This is really a fascinating area that I want to be part of, right? Boom, right? Then it also gives people choice. They may not have the skills or abilities to act immediately, right? But they can do long term, or they are really focused on immediate and they can do a small thing, but they can't do the big things. It's okay. And I love this idea of taking it from tension into takeaway. And remember to avoid data dumping.
Yeah,
Avoid data dumping as much as possible. You want people to say, you know what, you didn't speak enough about this or this,
right. And then
which
you can
never
have a
happens.
slide about that, but yeah, but it never happens, right? So,
So there's one more thing I'm going to leave you with a really powerful trick that I learned, being in the angel investment group and hearing thousands of pitches, because there everything is on the line. There's just 7 minutes. It's like a machine. You are competing really not with other competitors, but with other people who are asking for money and so forth, right? And it's so easy to get bogged down in details or conversely in stupid questions. So one of the best things to do is to do what I call communication aikido. Aikido is really, it's not about blocking, it's about redirecting. And the best thing that I've learned and I've seen people do is to say, I would love to talk to you more about competitive advantages or competitive analysis of our product versus the others. But it's a detailed explanation, but you can ask me about it during question and answer period.
deflect it out. Yeah.
Or I would love to talk to you about that offline.
Hmm.
Like I have a full analysis of our competition, right? But because it's so detailed oriented, I want to leave it to question and answers or offline. Boom, and move on. Now, what's going to happen? Paul, you tell me what's going to happen as soon as you finish the presentation.
Follow up conversation. They're gonna come right up to you and
Yep.
like
Or they're going to follow up your lead and they say, okay, this is question and answer period. Do tell me about your competitive niche. And you just killed two birds with one stone. You just added 2 extra minutes to your actual presentation. You also eliminated 2 minutes of stupid questions. And you are prepared unlike anyone else, because guess what? If you are doing a pitch, the competitive slide is right after the closing slide.
right.
And all of a sudden, not only are you ready, but are you ready unlike anybody else? Now it's your competitive advantage. Same thing here. You can always move it offline, right? You can also do the same thing with really bad questions or compound questions. You can admit that this is a really complicated question, right? And I want to give it its value, its full worth. Let's take it offline, or let's take it during question and answer, or I would love to talk to you after the presentation, right? And 9 times out of 10, people will be satisfied with that answer, right? And the same thing, you could say, you know what? I don't know the answer to this. I'd be glad to find out. Let's talk off. Because ultimately, the purpose of any presentation is to have the second meeting.
Yeah.
Right? So speaking of that, if you liked what you heard today, and I am still wondering how is it working on the live parts?
Seems to be working okay.
Is it working? Are you watching it through LinkedIn?
I'm watching it through whatever the link is that you sent, or that was associated with your
Right. That's the Riverside, but I'm wondering if it's actually.
I'm looking
it
at
seems to
Riverside.
be. Well, it's interesting. So either way, I'm learning. What I would like for you to do is 3 things. One is, if you really liked it, in the comments to the presentation, just leave your input. I would really love to hear it. Intermediarily, if you want to, if you can use my help, either through a career coach or pitching, let me know. Or even better, if you know people who are struggling and could use this kind of support, I could be of great value. And long term, just become a student of communication. Realize that what you say matters less than how you say it.
Right.
So, yeah. And
Okay,
thank you
Leo.
again for your time.
Thank you, sir, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys. See you, Paul.
Thank you, everybody.
Paul, thank you so much for coming on as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Hold on. Let me. I'll stop that. For those of you who are watching live, also let me know what you thought, felt, and decided to do while watching this presentation. Take care.